let's learn about Canada's three branches of federal government. First of all, what is the federal government? It's the level of government that deals with national laws, things that deal with the entire country. That's different than the provincial government, which deals with the laws of the province, and the municipal government, which deals with the laws of your city. The federal government might deal with the laws of the whole country, but they meet together in Ottawa. Federal. Perhaps you feel fed up with federal because they are so far away from you. But actually, the federal government is made up of people from all over the country, coming together to make important laws about defense, trade with other countries, money, immigration, fishing in oceans, and criminal laws. The federal government is divided into three branches to have check and balances so that no one gets too powerful: legislative, executive, and judicial. The legislative create laws, decides what's legal, legislative. The executive enforces the laws, executes the law, executive. And the judicial, which judges what the meaning of the laws are, judges law, judicial. Let's take a closer look at the legislative branch. It's also called the Parliament. It has three branches itself: the House of Commons, the Senate, and the Queen or King. The House of Commons forms the bills that become law. The Senate can veto the bills, and the Queen or King approves the bills. Let's focus on each of the legislative or Parliament branches. The House of Commons is the most important branch, but it's called the lower house because it's made of common people from communities. Common people in the House of Commons. These are the guys that you vote for from your home. They represent you, which makes us a representative democracy. You are writing on what they decide, so where they come from is called a riding. People in the House of Commons are called members of Parliament, or MPs, and they elect a leader called the Speaker of the House. And don't forget, the House of Commons is where laws are formed. But then laws can be vetoed or shut down by the next branch of legislature, or Parliament. That branch is the Senate, run by senators. These senators are not chosen by you and I, but they do come from all over the country. And once they get to be a senator, they don't have to leave until they're 75 years old. One idea behind having a branch that is not elected is that it should be harder to manipulate them. You can't say to them, "If you do this, you'll never get re-elected." They can be confident of their place and act on their conscience. And they can still get kicked out for accepting bribes or doing illegal stuff. But since they don't actually represent the people, they don't have much power. Yet they are still called the upper house. Often they are of the upper class. That leaves one more branch of the Parliament, the King or Queen. Having royalty who has to obey our constitutional laws makes us a constitutional monarchy. But let's be honest, the Queen is in charge of 16 different countries. She lives really far away, and well, let's face it, she's old. So she has someone represent her called the Governor General. The Governor General's main job is to approve laws or give her royal consent. This isn't too much power because she knows what has happened in other countries where royalty refused to obey laws. They lost their power of having a say in law. And so, the legislative or Parliament branch is made up of the House of Commons, Senate, and Governor General, which together make laws. Let's move on to the executive branch, the part of the federal government that makes sure laws are obeyed. There are three main branches: the Prime Minister, his cabinet, and You guessed it, the king or queen. Of course, yet again, the king or queen is represented by the Governor General. The Prime Minister is the most powerful person in all of Canada. He is the chosen leader of the political party that wins the most seats in the House of Commons. His cabinet ministers are MPs, members of Parliament, that lead departments. It's kind of like an actual kitchen cabinet. There you have cups in charge of drinks, bowls in charge of liquid food, and plates in charge of solid food. In the Prime Minister's cabinet, you have a minister in charge of international trade, a minister in charge of immigration, and a minister in charge of money, and ministers in charge of every main thing the federal government is entrusted with. The Prime Minister chooses who's in his cabinet. The Prime Minister also chooses the senators. Well, actually, it's the Governor General who follows the Prime Minister's advice. But we all know the Governor doesn't have too much say. In fact, it's the Prime Minister who pretty much tells the Queen who the Governor General should be. I know it sounds like the Prime Minister might have too much power, but his party can be voted out every 4 years during the federal elections. Even though the Prime Minister and his ministers make up the executive branch, they started out in the legislative branch as members of Parliament and are still a part of that too. In fact, the House of Commons is considered to have 2 parts, the Prime Minister and his cabinet, and the rest of the MPs. As you can see, the legislative and executive branches are interconnected, but that's not all that true about the last branch of the federal government, the judicial branch. The judicial branch interprets the meanings of the laws and decides if the laws follow the Constitution. The Supreme Court is the highest court and is made up of 9 justices. The lead justice is called the Chief Justice. They come from across the country and are chosen by the Governor General. But yet again, it's actually the Prime Minister who really decides who gets in, and the justices have their job until they are 75 years old. There are also lower courts that are part of the judicial branch. They include the provincial courts and the military courts. And there you have it, the 3 branches of the federal government, the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, each with their own set of branches, working together to hopefully create a government that will serve and protect you and me.